All right, everybody, welcome to Season 1, Episode 1. How many seasons are we doing?
No one knows.
No one knows, but here we are. So this is Elm Elaborates, and we are going to be talking about everything we do. Every Friday, we will be recording and giving you an in-depth look at what we do here at Elm Builders. My name is Ryan. I am the Director of Construction at Elm Builders. My background is in residential construction, commercial construction. I kind of danced around for the last probably decade. I started in residential remodels in New York City, did that for 2 to 3 years, basically was an estimator, assistant project manager, all throughout New York City. That was pretty tough, a lot of commuting, so actually I ended up moving to California where I started working for a glazing company, basically the glass on skyscrapers.
Okay.
I was a project manager for all that kind of stuff, did a giant building in UCLA. Tons of fun there, got a lot of great experience on commercial projects. I also was a home inspector for 2 years, basically just evaluating structures, MEPs, all that kind of stuff, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and structure. That's what MEP stands for. I was also a commercial roofer for a small period, and that's when I met Eric and Levi at a real estate meetup. We connected right away, and I decided to take the leap and jump on board with Eric, Levi, the Nomad team, the Elm team, City Storage team. We basically just hit it off, and they were looking for a construction project manager. After I did that for about 8 to 9 months, they moved me into the director of construction role, where Levi was then able to back out and focus more on Nomad Capital. Since then, we've hired Cameron Pleasant to kind of take over my role, which has been great for me. Also, me, my wife, my brother are invested in El Fundo. We took the leap. We had faith in what this company was doing, and we personally invested our dollars into what we do every day, which I think is really cool. So when I'm looking to save money on LVLs, bolts, I'm not just doing it for all of our investors. I'm doing it for me, my family, and basically a lot of the people I care about are actually invested in Nomad Capital and El Fundo specifically.
Nice. And I'm Cameron Pleasant. I joined the military right after high school. I did that for about 14-ish years and got out and did residential construction here in Wilmington, North Carolina. Did that for about 3 years. Really enjoyed residential construction, but was always looking to challenge myself a little bit. I met Clint, one of the partners here, and he talked about this great investing opportunity. So actually, I'm an investor as well and got invested with them. And then Clint just reached out to me one day and said, hey, we're looking for a project manager as well. So I sent my resume, met Ryan multiple times, had many lunches to talk about this position and what it all entailed, and got hired on. Actually, for some reason, they liked me and got hired on. And boy, was I just in a world of learning, because there's just so many facets that residential, I mean, it's all cookie cutter. It's just like boom, boom, boom. You're building the same house from floor plan elevation A to B and C and D, but with these conversions, it's just a whole nother world. So it's really been enjoyable to learn everything. Actually went ahead and got my GC NASCA license, so that was a big move in the right direction just to further my education and knowledge. And yeah, so here as a project manager, I just take control of the projects that we have going on, finances, contracts, making sure the schedule's looking tight and our finances are not. So we have money to use, and our contingency stays where it needs to be.
Well bolstered.
Well bolstered.
This is episode 1, The Blueprint.
Ooh, I'm loving it.
You know what I love?
Tell
People
me.
always talk about the blueprints, but in construction, do we actually say blueprints?
No, absolutely.
No. We say prints, plans.
Plan set.
Plan set.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if someone's saying blueprint, they're probably not really in construction.
Not in commercial
Yeah.
construction, I would say.
So the blueprint, well, the plans. So how do you get plans? Do they just show up the first day on your job site?
They do not. We hire an engineer or architect to come out. Along with that come MEPs, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers. They go with us on our site visits typically to figure out what we need to do to this facility to convert it into self-storage.
That's right. So a lot of that is looking at what's existing. Can we reuse it? Obviously, we're trying to save costs. Can we reuse that? What do we have to do to make the building structurally sound? We need 125 pounds per square foot to hold storage. Looking at the outside, is there any water intrusion? Is there any structural damage? All that kind of stuff. Even though a building is standing when you buy it, doesn't mean that it's structurally sound. So sometimes there's areas or sections that we have to structurally reinforce. Sometimes it's an entire floor that we have to structurally reinforce. There's just a lot that goes into it. Not only is there MEPs, there's also fire controls, fire sprinkler, fire alarms, all that kind of stuff that has to get engineered and designed. Typically, our architect won't do that, but we hire a subcontractor that has a design-build firm, so they design it, they submit it to the city, and then they can build it that way.
So let me ask you, what do we do here at Elm Builders?
Mostly push-ups. No. Elm Builders, we work for Nomad Capital and City Storage, 3 companies all under one roof. We basically do the conversion process.
Yeah.
Nomad Capital buys the buildings, we convert it. We actually get involved very early on in the process. We go and look at these facilities with Nomad Capital. We do our due diligence with them as a team. Once we own the building, we start the conversion process, go all the way through to the end, and hand it off to City Storage. They also get involved in the last 3 months about layout, signage, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a seamless handoff process. There's not hard breaks. It's all kind of one fluid motion from company to company to company.
Okay. Conversions. What does that entail? Like, what is a conversion?
A conversion is taking a building from one thing and making it a totally different thing. So basically, it's called change of use. We're changing the use of the building, whatever it was intended for originally, which is never really storage. It might be warehouse storage. It might be a Kmart where they're storing inventory. It might be a hosiery where they're storing clothing. But we take those buildings that are usually in rough shape, usually abandoned, and we renovate them to have new HVAC systems, new roofs, new electrical, and basically repurpose the building from sitting vacant to a beautiful climate-controlled self-storage facility.
Yes. Usually, it's more like almost always we find the rough jewel. You know, I guess we harness on that, trying to find that one that no one really wants, the down and dirty. Like, you look at this building, like, ugh, what is that?
Yes.
What is that? And we go, what can it be?
That's correct. The reason why we're able to do this for so much lower of a cost is there's usually something major with the building that has turned everybody away. And that's kind of like what gets us excited. Usually it's fallen out of contract. Usually somebody did their due diligence and they weren't sure about how to handle it. It just scared them.
Yeah.
Like making a whole HVAC system came from a neighboring building, crashed through the roof, put a giant hole in the roof. Like, those are the kind of things that we're looking for.
Yeah.
That's not going to really scare us, but obviously we need to be smart and do our due diligence. There was a recent project where it was like, okay, we needed a fire sprinkler. The floors weren't strong enough, and we weren't sure about the market. There's some times where it's like, okay, wait, this is just too much. This is too crazy, too many unknowns. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for something ugly that has like 1 or 2 hurdles that we can still make into a beautiful product.
Yeah, a room full of can people, we look at this facility and go, how can we make this work?
Yeah, and one of our favorite words is figure-outable.
It is figure-outable.
As long as it's figure-outable, then we're going to figure it out, and we're going to get it done.
Yeah, and it just makes us better, because like every building has that one unique trait to it that's like, we got to figure this out.
Yeah.
And now we go to the next building, like, oh, we already figured that out on previous buildings. Boom, now we become an expert in that category, and we just keep learning and getting better.
Yeah, like we've already seen things where we saw something on one building, we worked through it, and we've done it on the next 2 or 3. Even with our accounting and everything, like it's just becoming a well-oiled machine, if you will.
Yeah, so Ryan, you're the director. I am the project manager. We have a couple more people on our team. I guess let's just talk about them real quick. We got an accountant, Kyle.
That's correct.
He's the money guy. And then we have 3 field supers.
Yeah.
And their daily tasks, they range, from being on the site, figuring solutions out to these problems that we run across, because they are also not the experts in every category. So we hire on the experts, these subcontractors that know a lot about the particular trade that we're looking for, and then they get better and smarter at the same time as well.
Yeah, that's correct. So Kyle is basically all things money, accounts payable, accounts receivable. He helps me with the tax strategy, all that kind of stuff, keeping all of our books in line.
Yep.
So at the home front, that is a very important part of construction that is hugely missed. When you walk on a job site, you don't see that, but that is a huge piece to this puzzle.
Yeah.
Especially bank draws when we finish X amount of the project and we need the money to fund that to pay our subcontractors. Obviously, subcontractors love to be paid on time. So there's a whole machine to work that. We got to keep those subcontractors happy or else they won't show up to our job sites and do the work that we need them to do. But even when we do pay them on time and they show up to the job site and they have a set of plans, they can't always just take those plans and do that work. We need somebody on site that has the knowledge and directs them, especially some areas they can only work in certain areas of the building, and we have to schedule a whole team around to basically revolve around the building and get this stuff done in a nice, seamless pattern. If not, we'd have to wait for everybody to finish and get the next one. The construction would take forever.
Yeah.
So we need someone to direct them in the location, work, troubleshoot through problems. There's all sorts of different problems that you have running electrical wiring, HVAC ducts, interfering, plumbing, all these kinds of things that you have to troubleshoot, especially on a conversion when we're trying to reuse some of these things that, you don't really know what you're going to get until you rip the walls down and kind of take a look around.
Exactly. This is not ground up. This is we tear a wall down and we go, oh, that's behind that. Now we got to figure out how we're going to address this.
That's correct. So conversions, the complexity of conversions. It's what makes it fun and interesting.
It's a head scratcher, I'll tell you that.
Yes. So one project that comes to mind is Gastonia. We had these giant tanks. They were stainless steel tanks, about 20 feet high. They actually were in a pit, a 4-foot recessed pit. So that also made it very hard to get them out, as you can imagine. So they're in this pit. There's roof trusses on top, and we could have left them in and just kind of made a wall around them and left them in, but every square foot is valuable. And we did a cost analysis and we said, hey, look, we need to get these tanks out of here. So our thought was, well, these tanks are in nice shape. By the way, these are for like a bottling company. It was a Sundrop bottling facility. So they used it for their sugar, their water, all those kinds of things. So basically we determined that, these are valuable tanks. Like somebody might want these. Yeah. Like maybe we don't have to pay to get them taken out.
There's money already in this building.
Yeah. So there was a guy that wanted them, and boy, was he surprised how hard it was to get these things out. So we thought we could sell them and that kind of stuff, but honestly we said, you can take them for free if you get them out of the building. Yeah. So it was a huge process. Basically, we had to shove them back, tilt them over, all with heavy equipment. We had to get a whole craning and rigging company out here and just barely duck it under the roof truss. Then once we got it out, we realized, well, if we stand it up, we'll never be able to get it out the large garage door. Even though it's a huge garage door, it's still too tall. So they actually had to lean it down and drag it out of the building, literally. And as it got dragged out of the building, it hardly cleared the top of that garage door. Luckily, we had a special flatbed truck, too, right outside there blocking the road. And we drug it out and lifted it and put it on the flatbed. And we had to do that 3 or 4 times with the tanks. Yeah, it was quite the process. Yeah.
Just some other things that we run into with Kernersville. As we go into these buildings, we do our due diligence. We bring our engineer in, and we're doing a change of use, so we got to make sure the pounds per square foot, what we're going to turn this building into, is structurally sound. So when we go into these buildings, especially Kernersville, they had the floor rated at 95 pounds per square foot.
That's correct.
We need to be at least 125 for storage. So as the engineer's going through, he's looking at our structure and going, okay, we could do this for a little bit of LVLs here and there. And I'm like, okay, we're feeling confident. We're moving forward. And next thing you know, we get the plans, and it has 100 and something LVLs in it. So now we got to figure out how we're going to place these LVLs, do another cost analysis. Is this worth moving forward on this project to get these LVLs in? It was a lot of counting. It was that was like one of my very first tasks when I got there. Ryan just sends me some plans and goes, do a takeoff on these LVLs. I'm like, right. I don't even know. So it's just little things like that goes a long ways, but just makes these conversions so unique that we're turning something that used to be into something brand new. It's a head scratcher, but it's enjoyable.
That's right. Yeah. And that's why we have a contingency line item to tackle these things. Because not only was there more, but they were larger and thicker. They were these huge
18-inch and then 3.5 inches. And we're like, they don't even make that. You got a special order. Then we're like, okay, going back and forth, should we just double them up? We do that. And the bolt patterns, you got 30 bolts per. Should we do these bolts or should we just do all thread? I mean, there's so many caveats to it that we just, there's a lot of thinking. It's not just one answer, especially you come up with the answer and then someone else a day or two later has like, hey, let's think about this. And you gotta weigh those options again. But,
especially when you're talking about like 3,000 bolts. Yeah. Like, you got to think about it. We got to think about, yes, we have money in contingency, but like we can't eat that up right away. Like we got to do what we can to stay on budget. It's just the struggle when working with engineers.
And then how we're going to get these LVLs down there.
Yeah.
Who's going to install these massive 24-foot LVLs?
Yeah.
And so that's always the fun. But we do a good job finding people.
Yeah, and they're almost done.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Another project that comes to mind is Burlington. So a lot of times our buildings, they start as a small building and then they get added onto and added onto and added onto. So, you get these choppy sections and whatnot, and they're all built in different ages. You're building, typically when you get a house, you're like, okay, this house was built in 1980. Yeah. It's like, okay, the building was built in 1980. Our buildings, it's like, well, this section was built in 1918. This section was built in 1940. This section was built in 1960. Yeah. So you get this like crazy, conglomerate of buildings. So Burlington was that way where they kind of added on to it. And the original structure was like it was brick walls, but the floor joists and all the ceiling joists were all wood. And we knew walking through there, it was a very small section of the building. It was like less than 2% of the building. Okay. So it was I think it was 1,400 square foot. So we knew that section would have to be reworked. We pulled out the flooring, pulled down the walls, and pulled down the ceiling. We looked at this building and we were like, man, this thing is in rough shape. The water was just shooting through the brick because the brick had been underground for so long that the moisture had eaten the bricks away. So like you can literally scratch the brick off. And then obviously the water then wicked into the floor joists, which then rotted all the flooring, and it went up the walls. And when you have water and wood, you get termites. So the termites went up and kind of ate out the ceiling joists. Luckily, the vast majority of our building was block, concrete, and brick. Okay. So they didn't get to that section. They just ate and had a feast in the small section. So we did another cost analysis, and, really that side of the building had no parking. And we thought, you know what? It'd be easier just to cut the building in half and then take the top half off, regrade it, save some of the foundation. In the end, we saved hardly any of it. Had to pour a new footer, and we made parking in the loading dock right there, which is super convenient for our clients because now they have a way to load in the front left, and rear right. So it worked out perfectly. But that's what you kind of run into when you're doing these conversions. You pull out the flooring, and you're like, wow, all right, we must change course.
Another unique part about conversions is just, as you go through these and you find these things, these plans are then always changing. We have these plans set and we go forward with them, and then as we go through the build, we find other things. They're like, okay, where do we pivot? How do we change it? Yes. How do we keep it on budget?
Yeah, somebody that's not really in construction probably might not understand that, but basically the first plan set that we get on day one has never once been exactly what we ended up with, because you just can't predict these. No. On a new build, you might have small iterations here, but especially when they're stamping out the same building, by the fourth or fifth time, it's seamless. Like you're building what that is in that plan set. Here, I mean, every project. Gastonia was like we were up to revision 9, so you just never know what you're going to get.
And I think we're on revision 9 of Kernersville too.
Probably.
Look at us.
Yeah.
So as we go to these buildings that are pretty much dated,
Kernersville is 100 years. A section of that building is 100 years old.
100 years.
It's
to maybe
1918
50 years. So the original plans are not there. So our engineer has to go in and do as-builts, the existing condition of the facility, and measure everything out before even plans can even get started. We have to figure out what the existing condition is up front. Okay, now how do we convert this existing condition into self-storage to what we need?
That's correct. And when they give those existing condition drawings with all the dimensions, we're able to give that to our storage supplier and our other design professional, and they actually both will map out what they think is the best storage layout, and we send that storage layout to our acquisitions team, who has underwrote for, X amount of 10 by 10s and X amount of 10 by 5s. So we're always looking to see, okay, what they designed, is that actually what we underwrote for? Because in some markets, smaller units do better.
Yeah.
And then in some markets, larger units do better. People are moving more often. They need to put their whole house in there. So you just never really know. And that's why we don't guess. Yeah. I love to say that, like Elm Builders, we never want to assume, because you don't know what everybody else is thinking. There's so many moving parts that if we don't know the answer, we have to pass that on and get the right answer. So that's what developing plans, it resolves all of that, because we're not guessing anymore. This is exactly what we need to do for the structural load. This is exactly what we need to do for the HVAC, dehumidifiers, all these things. It's all engineered so that, we're not guessing what we're installing. Yeah. We get a plan and we execute that plan. Does that plan change?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We find things in doing conversions that nobody was able to determine. It was impossible for them to know, but we have to jump these hurdles together, and we have design professionals doing that with us.
Absolutely.
Gotta love it. That's conversions for you. But it keeps it interesting.